We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, friends and neighbors, brothers and sisters, how y'all doing? Hopefully well. My personal life has been in a bit of turmoil, but I'm staying consistent here and trying to get on at least once a week and talk to y'all. We already got my good friend Willie Bragg in the comments. Hey Willie, how you doing, man? I've been watching you. I've been seeing you out there. I see all y'all out there. So I appreciate you checking in with me. And I keep cranking out content. It seems like YouTube has been a little bit nicer lately, given the circumstances. They're being a little bit less censorious, it seems like. Maybe lightening up a little bit. But I was just listening to Dave Smith and his buddy Rob talking about how they feel like another wave is coming, especially after what just happened with the Supreme Court, which I don't really pull together a whole lot of data on those cases. I'm sure you saw the results, though, if you follow politics at all. Basically, you know, they had a couple of really bad rulings. One being about in regards to censorship on the internet. They kind of basically gave the government the go-ahead to continue doing that stuff. But then they also kind of came down on the side of Trump in the January 6th case, which wasn't surprising to me because it's basically saying that, hey, no, you can't prosecute a former president. So, you know, all the liberals kind of lost their minds over that because now it's going to be nearly impossible for them to prosecute Donald Trump over the January 6th stuff. But also it exonerates, you know, it protects former presidents like Barack Obama and George Bush from prosecution for anything that they've done. So if they've committed war crimes and there's proof of that, you can't go back and prosecute that. So even though a lot of, like, I saw Eric Holder throwing a fit about it, like, oh, this is the end of democracy. It's like, no, it actually kind of protects your guy too from the stuff that you guys did when he was president. So it's been a wild week in that regard. But then on the other side of it, you know, we had these decisions on the, like I said, the censorship thing. And there was another one that was not great either. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. I have a couple of, I think, really good stories to focus on today. So let's get plowing right into it. Issue number one being the economy. Now, if you live in the United States, we go through these cycles all the time. And I mean, for me personally, I've been working class, you know, my whole life. My parents did all right, but they weren't never rich. In the last couple of years before, you know, the economy kind of really cratered out, I was doing really well in an office job and I was making, you know, basically six figures. That dropped off. And for the last couple of years, I've been really struggling to get by, as a lot of people I know are. And we're being gaslit constantly about the state of the economy by the mainstream media hold on real quick. Let me just take a quick aside here. I want to say this one more time because I'm sure I've said it before, but I need to stop calling it the mainstream media. And I believe it was Glenn Greenwald and Dave Smith who were talking about this. Calling it the mainstream media is counterproductive because it really is not the mainstream media anymore. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, they get less views than your average popular YouTuber or social media TikToker. So they're no longer the mainstream media. They are the corporate media. They're the media that is controlled and gatekept by moneyed interests and wealthy elites. And so calling them the mainstream is kind of a dated term, which I loved that subject matter. So forgive me, the corporate media has been gaslighting us for a long time about. So this is an article from March 28th of this year. U.S. economy continues to shine with help from consumers and labor market. Oh yeah, isn't that great, Reuters? you shit peddlers, bullshit peddlers. Here's another one from Bloomberg. The good news, bad news, the good news, bad news about the surprisingly strong U.S. economy. This is from a month later, about a little bit less than a month, April 19th, 2024. And this is the Washington edition, the newsletter about money, power, and politics in the nation's capital. So I think it was Ken Klippenstein who said this recently, and it was so profound. He said, the reason the media sucks for the average person is because they don't work for you. They work for the people that run ads, the military industrial complex, the lobbyists, the pharmaceutical industry. And just reading this little caption here kind of just lays all that bare. This is the Washington edition, the newsletter about money, power, and politics in the nation's capital. So they're kind of just telling you straight up, hey, this is who their audience is here. And it's, people that are involved in politics or, the finance industry or what have you. And then it says the world is watching. Two hot themes emerged as the lords of international finance gathered in Washington this week for the spring meetings of the IMF and World Bank. The U.S. economy's surprising strength is carrying global growth. Yay! And robust U.S. growth is making life difficult for everyone else. Boo. So the reason that the economy sucks for us, basically what they're saying, is because of robust growth. And I'm sure that if you work for a living, you're seeing that robust growth all over the place. It's very evident, isn't it? That was pure sarcasm. So this is been the tone of the press for several months. And when I read these kind of articles, the tone of these articles, my response is something like,
what's the weather like on your planet?
Because they're completely out of touch with how the majority of the country is living right now. So to get back to this is why this is interesting to me, because this morning I came across this headline from CNN, and I've been trying to do more. Most of what I cover on my stream is political YouTubers, lefty YouTubers, independent YouTubers like Tim Pool or even right team, mostly indie media stuff. So what I've been trying to do more is pay a little bit more attention to the corporate media and the narratives that they're kind of constructing, and just really look into the stuff they're saying. So I jumped into the news this morning. I was like, hey, what's a headline? Most of the headlines are still about Biden and the debates and whether or not they're going to keep him. But this was one of the below the fold headlines I saw that I thought I wanted to go into the weeds a little bit on. And it says, a key part of America's economy has shifted into reverse. So obviously I was curious as to what part of that economy they're speaking of here. And this is analysis by Brian Mina, CNN, from today, July 7th, 2024. So let's dig into this a little bit here. So a vast swath of the U.S. economy is showing signs of weakness as unemployment rises to its highest point in more than 2 years. Again, I know that they're skewing these numbers somehow, but I know a ton of people who were laid off in the tech industry recently, and it has not rebounded. A lot of people I know who worked like Facebook and Amazon and Google and all these big Silicon Valley enterprises lost their jobs, and those jobs have not been regained. So I don't know where these numbers are coming from, but let's keep going. Consumer demand seems to have tapered off so far this summer, according to surveys of American businesses that sell any kind of service to make a profit, ranging from restaurants to dental clinics. So that's the sector of the economy they're speaking of that's shifting into reverse. That weakness is also evident in the latest spending figures, a far cry from last year's lucrative summertime spending spree when Americans shelled out for films and high-profile concerts. The Institute for Supply Management's latest monthly survey that gauges economic activity in the services sector showed that so-called new orders and overall economic activity unexpectedly slipped into contraction territory last month. The headline index fell to a reading of 48.8 in June from 53.8 in May, as the new orders sub-index saw an even steeper decline, down from 47.3 from 50 down to 47.3 from 54.1. A reading above 50 indicates expansion, while anything below that threshold points to a contradiction. So that's stuff that it sounds like mumbo jumbo to me, but let's keep going here. When you think of services, a lot of it is driven by the consumer, and the consumers are key to where the U.S. economy grows. Duh. James Knightley, chief international economist at ING, told CNN. We're starting to see stress in more and more households. So it kind of makes you wonder, I've said this before, but in media, it feels like the music industry, again, like the underground, all this stuff that we know, it takes months and months to kind of trickle up to the corporate press. Like we've been talking about how the economy sucks for months in the indie media, but apparently they've been covering too hard for the current administration to admit a lot of this stuff. And now that the knives are out for Biden, these kind of articles are going to be a little bit more common, I think. And people are like, oh yeah, he is actually demented, even though we've been telling you that was right wing for months. And wow, the economy really isn't actually that good. Now we're kind of seeing that it isn't that good. Interesting. The U.S. consumer is indeed under pressure, grappling with still high inflation, the highest interest rates in more than 2 decades, depleted pandemic savings, according to some measures, and a growing load of debt. Consumer spending, which makes up about 70% of the U.S. economy, has already moderated over the past few months. Government statistics show, and retailers themselves have said, they've noticed shoppers across the income spectrum change their purchasing behavior. A food services business surveyed by ISM said sales and traffic remain soft compared to last year, blaming high gas prices in California and constant news about inflation and restaurant menu prices. Yeah, so it's the news about inflation and restaurant menu prices that's causing this, not the actual inflation and restaurant. It's news about those things that's hurting people, their perception, not reality. This is wild. Spending at restaurants and bars declined 0.4% in May, according to the latest Commerce Department figures in retail sales. A retail company told ISM, with inflation continuing, will customers have enough discretionary funds to spend? I literally had a friend of mine call me yesterday and asked me if I wanted to go to lunch, and I had to say I can't afford to go to lunch right now. I'm pretty down on my luck. I don't have a lot of cash in the bank. I'm barely scraping by, if you know what I mean. To keep going here, Knightley provided CNN an analysis of government data showing that Americans in the top 20% of earners were responsible for a large share of spending on services related to transportation, air travel and cruises, recreation, food, and finance. Of course. Duh. The bottom 80% of households by income accounted for a larger proportion of spending on healthcare services. But it takes time before slowing demand translates into slower hiring or layoffs, because businesses have to determine if they didn't just deal with a bad month or two, perhaps even a bad quarter. Scott Hamilton told global chairman of human resource and compensation consulting, Ed Gallagher, told CNN. Wow, that was a long title. And also, what does that even mean? They're not going to immediately stop hiring because the economy's bad? Is that makes that section kind of doesn't really make sense there, but whatever. Service providing businesses have already been hiring at a weaker clip. See what I mean? These firms have added 168,000 jobs a month on average from April through June, according to fresh Labor Department data released Friday. That's much lower than the average for the prior 3 months from January through March, which was 241,000 jobs. Last year, the average monthly job gain in the services industry was 228,000 jobs. Hiring trends, of course, vary within the services sector, a huge slice of the job market. So even though they're kind of admitting things are not great, they're still kind of trying to paper over it a little bit with linguistics here. Last month, retail trade employment shrunk for the first time since November, while temporary help services contracted by 48,900 jobs, dragging down the broader professional and business services super sector, which lost 17,000 workers. Healthcare has been one major bright spot for the services sector, adding jobs at a brisk pace for the past few decades, excluding a drop-off in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But even then, some businesses in that industry have recently noticed softening demand. Demand for services is moderated after the near record patient levels of the last month, a healthcare and social assistance firm said in their latest ISM survey. So they're like, demand for services is moderated after the near record patient levels. They always like pepper the language with like, see, it's not that bad. The job market staged a stunning comeback when the broader U.S. economy recovered from the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, duh. No one was working during that. So any of those numbers look amazing because it's like, yeah, we did it, guys. We let everyone go back to work finally. Look at those numbers. What the hell? Eventually leading to unemployment falling to a half-a-century low of 3.4% in 2023 for the first time. It's loosened up recently, however, with unemployment now at 4.1%, the highest level since November 2021, and new applications for jobless benefits on an upward trend. Fed officials are keeping a close eye for any alarming signs of weakness in the job market as they await for further evidence that inflation will continue to slow without an unexpectedly hot economy sabotaging that. Yeah, we wouldn't want this unexpectedly hot economy to sabotage that, now would we? And that's the whole article. Pretty much the language in that is just ridiculously weird. And after the last couple of weeks watching, what these people said about Biden kind of be completely proven wrong once that debate happened, I don't imagine how anyone can read anything from any of these corporate outlets without a very healthy degree of skepticism.
Stupid ass boy. Hey, look.
So that's our first story today about the economy versus the rose-colored picture that it's being painted of it in the press. I would like to move on now to another story about the media. And this is kind of a double-sided story because it involves one of my favorite fellow beanies, Tim Pool, but also just one of those things where the media kind of made a flip way too late. I talk a lot about how the big problem with the corporate media is that they're like 3 to 6 months behind actual news. So like if you read news on Twitter, you know stuff instantly as it happens because people are tweeting about it. But the corporate press, especially if it's news that's inconvenient to, some of their sponsors, will drag their feet on news until it's like 6 to 8 months after the fact. Like we've all known that what's going on in let's just say Eastern Europe on the border of a very large country that the US had fought a Cold War with. We all know that that's tragically, fragile and falling apart. But if you've been watching the press, they're like, we're winning, victory is on our side, and we gotta, but eventually, and you're starting to see it trickle through now, the press will come around to like, oh yeah, that was garbage. So this is one of those instances where fact checkers in Snopes came around to the truth 7 years after the fact. And I want to start this video by saying I really love Tim Pool's show, and I love that he has a diversity of views, but you're going to see one of his cohorts here, Phil, is just like has an absolutely ridiculous mind, and I'll just leave it at that. But watch this clip real quick, and this is them talking about Snopes' sudden reversal on this thing about Trump, praising white
did not
supremacists.
call neo-Nazis and white supremacists very fine people. Published June 20th, 2024.
Media Matters most affected.
Literally.
Yes, literally.
About something that happened in 2017.
And the Media Matters, some of the Media Matters, some of the alumni from the Media Matters were out in force claiming that Donald Trump did. No, Snopes, you're wrong, that he was there, blah, blah, blah. If that's the case, you're on the side of commies and you're responsible for the 100 million dead.
We got to share.
Okay, this guy is literally, how the right will make fun of the left for being completely batshit insane, like they blue hair people that think that there's 17 genders, they're just crazy. Phil here is the right-wing version of that. Like every problem in the world is because of the left, and the left is so evil and authoritarian. And we're gonna take a side branch into that, but let's kind of stick with the theme first about how Snopes just barely corrected the facts on a smear against Trump.
We got to show this. Okay, so it says on August 15th, 2017, good 7 years ago, there's some 7-year-old kid who's like, let's be real. There's like a 14-year-old kid who is just now like starting to hear stuff on the news.
2017 doesn't feel like it was 7 years ago. That's crazy.
And he was like, I was playing with Play-Doh when this happened, and now it's being fact-checked, but let me read. Then President Donald Trump called neo-Nazis and white supremacists who attended the Charlottesville rally very fine people. False. In a news conference, after the rally protesting the planned removal of a Confederate statue, Trump did say they were very fine people on both sides, referring to the protesters and the counter-protesters. He said in the same statement that he wasn't talking about neo-Nazis and white nationalists, who he said should be condemned totally. Editor's note.
Oh, boy.
Some readers have raised the objection that this fact check appears to assume Trump was correct in stating that there were very fine people on both sides of the Charlottesville incident. That is not the case. This fact check aimed to confirm what Trump actually said, not whether what he said was true or false. What? For the record, virtually every source that covered the Unite the Right debacle concluded that it was conceived of, led by, and attended by white supremacists, and that therefore Trump was wrong. This is an opinion statement. This is the most.
So I also covered in a recent stream how one of the main organizers of that Charlottesville protest was a former Obama campaign staffer, which is interesting.
Most nonsensical thing. When Trump says there are very fine people on both sides, it's an opinion statement. You can't be right or wrong. I mean, like, you can have bad opinions, but there is no true or false in the opinion statement. It's, do you agree with Trump's assessment of fine or not? Now, the reality was Trump was correct. There's like a video of a little old lady. She's not a nasty person or a neo-Nazi or anything like that. She's just some little old lady who heard they were going to tear down her statue and she didn't want it to happen. There's a bunch of people like that. They're very fine people. That's it. Now, the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, of course, they're not. They were there, and they intended on violence just like, and not every single one, don't get me wrong, but many of them intended on violence and brought weapons for that matter. I think there's a video of one guy shooting at another guy. So not a good thing in any respect, but it's like Trump gives opinion on people he saw. He's wrong.
Well, he's not allowed to have opinions. Right.
Here's the thing I've noticed, too, about Trump over the years is the media will take him out of context. Like the bloodbath thing, if you remember, is such a great example. When he was talking about recently, this was like a month or a couple months ago, and he said, if I'm not elected, it's going to be a bloodbath. And he was referring to, in context, if you watched, the context around what he says, he's referring to the auto industry because he's talking about EVs. And, my opinion on EVs is definitely, you've probably heard me talk about them, but I like EVs. I think that's obviously the trend of the future, but I don't think you should ban gas cars either. I think people should have a choice. There's also oil lobbies involved in this. There's a lot of propaganda that like, oh, if you drive a EV, you're a friggin' fruit bucket who, only eats like scientific lab grown meat and, soy boys, like you're a pussy if you drive an EV. So there's propaganda like that, but I'm getting off the rails. The point is the press clearly distorts Trump when they can for, their own gain or some kind of salacious or to smear him as a white supremacist. So this is unsurprising. And this is honestly one of the things, the Charlottesville thing back in the day when I was like, oh, F that guy if he's saying white supremacists are okay. But it was totally taken out of context. And he actually condemned the white supremacists and the Nazis, but he did say there were fine people on both sides, because not all of the protesters on the right side were Nazis. Just like not all of the left protesters were Antifa, which are cops.
All of his opinions are bad and wrong.
It's literally just if it is not useful for the narrative that the left wants to portray.
No, it's not. And I think what's crazy is there's no need.
So this guy, Phil, it frustrates me, and Tim does this too, but everything is the left. And we're gonna go into why that's a ridiculous thing to be like, the left.
For that editor's note, Snopes doesn't have the cojones to just own their fact check. Like your fact check is just facts. You shouldn't have to.
It's them saying.
Yeah, see, what this lady doesn't understand is the audience they've been pandering to for the last several years is very upset that they would come out and say what they just did, which is be honest about the facts of the situation. So their little side note is really just pandering to that audience, despite, they're going to alienate them no matter. You can't say anything in defense of or anything good about Trump, or you're clearly a white supremacist, MAGA, terrorist who wants to overthrow the government on January 6th,
That's cowardice.
We don't like Donald Trump
cowardice.
either. We don't like him either. We had to say this thing, but we're still on your side, guys.
Exactly.
That's the state of journalism now, where
That's
you
all
can't
it
even
is.
say they report the facts and they're like, we're so sorry that we had to tell you this.
We're
But,
sorry that the
here it is.
truth.
Yeah.
We're sorry the truth doesn't align with your attempts to manipulate. But listen, the
Soap
left
says Trump is still a bad guy.
the left doesn't use language in a way to communicate. They use language to manipulate.
Yes.
That is the point of language to the left. They believe that words contain power, and that to use words is to try to exercise power. They don't believe that that you can possibly have an honest conversation.
Listen to this guy. This guy just hates the left because he just like a lot of people on the left has been butt whipped, brainwashed into this caricature of what the left is. And the reality is, this is not the left. What he's talking about with language, do you know where that comes from? Yeah, the left is doing it now, but they're not the left. The Democrats have co-opted that neoconservative infrastructure. There was a guy, and let me see if I can take a sidebar here, Frank Luntz, and he had a book called Words That Work. And this guy was a Republican, 1,000% Republican. And he wrote a book called Words That Work. And now I believe that this guy is a never Trumper who's kind of gone over to the neoliberal side, the pro, Biden, the Democrats of today are neoconservatives, and I have receipts for that. But real quick, let me just show you that what he's talking about with the manipulation of language is generated by this guy right here, Frank Luntz, the nation's premier communications expert, shares his wisdom on how the words we choose can change the course of business, of politics, and of life in the country. In Words That Work, Luntz offers behind-the-scenes look at how the tactical use of words and phrases affects what we buy, who we vote for, and even what we believe in. With chapters like the 10 rules of successful communication and the 21 words and phrases for the 21st century, he examines how choosing the right words is essential. Nobody is in a better position to explain than Frank Luntz. He used his knowledge of words to help more than 24 Fortune 500 companies grow. He'll tell us why Rupert Murdoch's $6 billion decision to buy DirecTV was smart, because satellite was more cutting edge than digital cable. So this is an old book, and it was released the year Obama became president, August 5th of 2008. So that is the genesis of what this guy is attributing to the left here. And so I want to also show you this. When we talk about the Biden administration being neoconservatives, there is so much of this that people like, this guy Phil completely gloss over. And honestly, I think has been really obscured from view for the most part from a lot of people. And if you look at the Biden administration, people like Victoria Nuland, who resigned recently, is no longer in the Biden Defense Department, but Jake Sullivan, all these people, they all the neoconservatives, the war hawks, moved to the Obama side during the Obama administration. And that's why when Trump rose up as the Republican, nominee, all of the David Frums, the Bill Kristols, Nicole Wallace is on MSNBC now. She was George Bush's press secretary. But I wanted to show you this article I found because this is very, very interesting. And it's from a magazine called Canary, very left-leaning magazine. And the article is by a guy named Peter Bolton, and it came out in July of 2020. Now think back to July of 2020. What was going on then? That was around the time that Bernie got pushed out of the Democratic primary, and Biden was kind of being foisted on us as the Democratic nominee, and Trump was kind of pushing a lot of the neoconservatives to the Democratic Party. So check this out. Bush-era neocons put their weight behind Biden, and that can mean only one thing. I wonder what that is. Let's keep going. Earlier this year, former Vice President Joe Biden effectively won the Democratic primary contest. As the Canary has previously argued, his victory is nothing to celebrate given that his progressive credentials are paper thin. Throughout his political career, Biden has been a prolific supporter of war and cuts to Social Security. He's also a friend of some of the most reactionary elements in the U.S. Congress. Now, his campaign has started receiving funding from former officials of a previous Republican Party administration, and this shows decisively what has long been suspected by progressive political analysts, and commentators, that the U.S. essentially has two right-wing major parties. Ta-da! And this is where people like Phil here just sound stupid when they rant about the left. Yo, Phil, this is not the left. Biden and the Democrats of today are not the left. And if you think that, you're either unintentionally or intentionally stupid. But let's keep going. So 43 alumni for Biden is formed. So this is an article about how a bunch of Bush administration officials, neocons, backed Biden. On 1st of July, a new organization backing Biden and calling itself 43 Alumni for Biden appeared online. The number 43 refers to the U.S.'s 43rd president, George W. Bush, a Republican. Bush's presidency to this day is overwhelmingly associated with neoconservatism and is the so-called Bush doctrine of preemptive war that emerged in the aftermath of the September 11, 2001 attacks. Now, when you read this stuff, doesn't all the crap that's going on overseas make so much more sense now? Like the stuff in Ukraine and the stuff in the Middle East? Because these are the people who are backing the Biden administration. The same people who gave us Afghanistan and Iraq. And Phil is a dumb ass who does not even broach that subject. He's caught in this stupid high school, like, the left, I'm on the right and I'm a tough guy, and the left is, This is not the left, dipshit. As a new generation of never Trumpers, it's not the first time that Trump has been attacked within his own party. When Trump started surging in the Republican Party primaries in 2016, a group of more traditional Republicans opposing him coalesced into the Never Trump movement. Of course, they didn't succeed in stopping him from winning the nomination or the election against Hillary Clinton later that year. The latest move on their part comes amid plummeting approval ratings for President Trump. As the Canary has previously reported, Trump is now trailing Biden by double digits in some polls. This is following his poor handling of the coronavirus pandemic and heavy-handed response to protests connected to the police killing of George Floyd. So remember, this came out in July of 2020 as the campaign against Trump was ramping up with the Democrats, and they had just stomped Bernie and coalesced around Biden, along with the neocons, to get Trump out of office. But let's keep going. Wait, I skipped the second. Wait, did I skip the second paragraph on that? No, I didn't. My bad. I thought I forgot to read the segment. Anyway, to keep going here. Time to get real about their motives. It would be wrong, however, to think that the people involved with 43 alumni for Biden are motivated by any of these factors. So what he's saying here is that, Trump's handling of coronavirus and the George Floyd protests is not what motivates these people at all, clearly. Rather, the formation of the group represents a calculated move by the neoconservative wing of the U.S. ruling class. It's an attempt to strengthen the U.S.'s hand on the global stage following damage to its manufactured veneer of credibility during Trump's tenure. So this guy it's clear as you read this guy does not like Trump. And remember, this came out in 2020. So, he has plenty of good reason not to. I'm not going to hammer on him for that. But that just proves more the points he's making here are legitimate, because he doesn't even like Trump, and he's telling you that these terrible people are backing Trump's opposition, which is Joe Biden. It's an attempt to strengthen the U.S.'s hand on the global stage following the damage to its manufactured veneer of credibility during Trump's tenure. In other words, they oppose Trump not because of his racism or his constant lying. We're going to get to his racism in a minute, which I think is largely also manufactured. But because he is too erratic to properly govern the U.S.'s imperial apparatus. At the same time, his crudeness, buffoonery, and unhinged modus operandi have turned the U.S. into a laughingstock. They've also alienated traditional mainstream allies in the process, particularly those in Western Europe. Now, even that, kind of framing there, I believe is somewhat manufactured by the corporate press. And especially now, looking back in retrospect, but I don't think he's wrong. He's basically telling you, we all know there was an organized effort from both parties to get this guy out of there. I'm just showing you that a very heavy neoconservative element was part of that. Let's keep going. As a result of these factors, the neocon wing of U.S. politics prefers Biden. I almost said perverts. He is already perverted. Prefers Biden because Biden will prove to be a more competent, consistent, and above all, reliable administrator of the U.S.'s empire. After all, he served as vice president during the Barack Obama presidency, and as Canary has already argued on multiple occasions, Obama's presidency was one of the most reactionary in U.S. history, one that largely continued and even escalated many of the policies of George W. Bush, including or perhaps even especially in the realm of foreign policy. So this guy is clearly not a, stock and trade Democrat either. He's obviously not a fan of Trump, but look at this. He's got his breakdown of Obama. Obama's sordid record. This record includes launching 10 times as many covert drone assassinations as Bush, orchestrating regime change in Libya, and in the process turning the country into a medieval throwback, playing a hand in the 2009 coup in Honduras, as well as aiding successive post-coup governments, imposing crippling sanctions on the democratically elected government of Venezuela, which we saw Trump helped install a fake president that they didn't accept, Juan Guaido, keeping open the infamous Guantanamo Bay detention center in which people are held indefinitely without charge and frequently subjected to torture, and increasing troop numbers in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that's a very clear-eyed look back at the Obama era. But let's keep going. Hillary Clinton played a leading role in some of these policies. Remember, she was his Secretary of Defense as Obama's Secretary of State between 2009 and 2013. And it was for this reason that, like Biden now, she was the preferred choice of the traditional Washington foreign policy establishment in the 2016 presidential election. As a matter of fact, she even sought the endorsement of the notorious war criminal Henry Kissinger as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor under the presidency of Richard Nixon. Kissinger served as the architect of some of the U.S.'s worst foreign atrocities. People forget this, especially Phil here. Final slide here of this two rival wings of a rogue state. And this is a great summary here. in case there was any remaining doubt following the defeat of Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary, this latest episode perfectly demonstrates how the Democratic Party is terminally unreformable. This guy sounds like Jimmy Dore. In short, the two major U.S. parties now essentially represent rival wings of an imperialist and neoliberal status quo, and they take turns to govern a rogue state that increasingly resembles a fully fledged terrorist enterprise. With someone like Trump, now the major leading figure in the Republican Party, the U.S. now has one right-wing party and one far-right party that borders on the fascistic. Clearly, the U.S. desperately needs a third political force to challenge this wretched hegemony. Now, that guy kind of just basically laying it out like it is. I have covered this in past streams. The interview that Trump did with Tim Pool. Let me see if I can find it, where he says, I don't want any more wars. Let's see if it's on here. Timcast. Here we go. Let's see if this will play.
See wars. I don't want to see wars.
Who is saying that on the campaign trail? We don't want to see wars. I don't want to see wars. That kind of candor, again, is probably why they have 4 court cases open against the guy right now. This is my short.
There's in no wars other than we finished a war with ISIS and we completed it, 100% complete. But I don't want to see wars. I think it's so horrible, so unnecessary.
If you remember, too, that war with ISIS he's talking about, guess who we worked with? Russia. Russia helped us defeat ISIS in Syria.
So costly in terms of lives and money in that order. And destroying these countries, you know, you're destroying culture. When you look at Ukraine, that would have never happened if I were president. You look at the October 7th attack on Israel, it would have never happened.
Why?
That part right there is so key, where he says we're destroying culture. That, I mean, to me, that makes it real obvious that the you know, case against Trump and the things that he says have been so distorted. And so I just, you know, when you see this, you cross the kind of narrative about him in the press, and then you see him making comments like that. You know, he definitely says other stuff that might be counter to that. But to me, the reason that the press is so aligned against him is because of this factor right here, as we just covered with this Canary article about the, you know, the neocons aligning behind the Democrats. It's just too obvious to me that this is why they oppose him more than anything. And to me, this issue alone is a reason I think I'm totally fine with him winning over Biden, and I might even consider voting for him because of this alone, because he's a loose cannon on the war state, you know. And I don't think that this is the other thing. That Tim Pool clip is a candid clip of him talking, you know. And when you listen to Trump filtered through the press, you get this like completely different picture of him than if you actually just listen to him talk and the things he says in context. So continuing down this, moving on and continuing down this path about how terrible the press is, this is just, you know, this next segment is just another example of how ridiculous things have really gotten here. And I'm going to go ahead and put this up for you. This is a tweet from a journalist, Jill Filipovich. To be clear, the Biden team could fully weekend at Bernie's him or send 3 toddlers in a trench coat to the next debate, and I would still vote Biden over Donald Trump and will encourage everyone else to do the same, but like not ideal. That woman is a quote unquote journalist. This is what I said in my tweet. This is a journalist in 24. She's just saying, yeah, I'm a partisan hack out loud. I'll give her credit at least for being honest. You know, at least we know where she stands. But how did we get to a point where that's okay? Like I didn't even know who this woman was, really. So I went to her profile just to look, but this is who she is. Jill Filipovic, writer, author, CNN columnist, recovering lawyer, and yogi. I write about women's rights, U.S. politics, and foreign affairs. I wonder if she's written about how Trump doesn't support a federal abortion ban, or how he's kind of said leave it to the states. The Republican Party has kind of dismantled all of the scare tactics that the Democrats are trying to use against them, including, abortion. And now there's this new thing about Project 2025. So I happened to catch this morning on Dave Smith. They did a piece and they had this clip of Joy-Ann Reid from MSNBC. So, just keep in mind, this is a journalist today just flat out saying, I work for the president. I'm not a journalist. I'm literally a mouthpiece of the administration. That's what this woman's saying with that tweet. Just to go back to it real quick so you can see it again. Look at that. That's a CNN commentator, a quote unquote journalist, basically saying, vote for this guy. And regardless of what you think about Trump, I think that's one of the reasons he's been demonized to such an extent, is because that way they feel like they have a free pass to pretend like they don't have to be partial, because Trump is just, he's Hitler, so why do we don't have to be partial. We just have to get the word out that we're not voting for Hitler. So this is how unhinged these people have really gotten in the quote unquote press. And I did a whole entire piece last time about how the biggest takeaway from the Biden-Trump debate that just happened was how full of shit the press is, because leading up to that, they were all like, he's fit, he's the best Biden ever. In private, he's sharp and on point, and he knows everything. And then they put him out on a stage, and you see what he really looks like, candidly. And they have to go, oh, we didn't even notice that. Oh, how did, so it's terrible. But watch this clip of Joy-Ann Reid just to show you how ridiculous these people are. It's just, it's out of control at this point. Here we go. Enjoy.
Unhinged rounds.
Y'all just tell me who the nominee is going to be. Let me know when you guys are finished fighting amongst yourselves who I got to vote for in November to keep Hitler out the White House. That's all I want to know.
That's the framing. This is again a journalist.
Got to vote for to keep Hitler out the White House. Y'all do your thing. Play in traffic all you want in front of these Republicans, acting a fool in front of these people instead of privately declaring your stuff. But don't text me no more, because I'm not taking no more of these texts.
And this is a person who I'm sure claims to be a progressive and support progressive values. She'll never do a deep dive into an article like I just did, showing you how all the neocons back Biden and how the war state is totally on Biden's side.
Just let me know when you guys are finished figuring it out, Democrats, because I know y'all the freak out people. Go ahead and freak out. Have your conversation, and then let me know who I got to vote for to keep Hitler out the White House.
Us adults are fine with hoisting a corpse into the White House again to protect us from evil Hitler, man.
That's it. I'm done. Oh, and by the way, if it's Biden in a coma, I'm going to vote for Biden in a coma. I don't even really particularly like the guy. A lot of his policies, don't like him. He's not Donald Trump, right? Yeah. Hitler, White House.
I don't even particularly like the guy. That is probably the biggest lie she told in this whole piece.
We keeping him out, keeping Project 2025 out. That's all I care about. Up and down the ballot, from the rooter to the tutor, school board, all the way up to White House and everything in between. Governors, members of Congress. I'm just going to vote all the way down to keep these people out. The Project 2025 thing is the whole Republican Party. At this point, it's not about Biden. It is not about him. It's above me now. There's a Best Western next door. It is about keeping Donald Trump and his Project 2025 friends out of power. That's it for me, y'all. Y'all let me know what you think. And
so
the latest.
Her argument here is that she'll vote for a corpse to keep Donald Trump and his Project 2025 out of the White House, because I hadn't even heard of Project 2025 until recently, until they, started talking about it. So I want to show you. I thought this was interesting, and this is something that you won't see on MSNBC. But this is what Donald Trump had to say himself about Project 2025. And this is from his, I believe, Facebook page or his Instagram. But he says, I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them. So this is the new liberal scare tactic that, we have to stop Trump because he supports this shadowy Project 2025 thing. And as we've seen in the past, they will manufacture dumb shit to get you to vote against him. They'll just make shit up. And the other side of it is the racism thing can go the other way. But let's watch this second clip of Joy Reid here, because she goes into some other ridiculous shit that we're going to talk about here. Check this out.
We've got another thing. You guys do know that in 2020, y'all Democrats had choices of young people. You had a young LGBTQ guy, Mayor Pete. You had a Latino. You had Kamala Harris. You had Liz Warren. You had all these choices that were all younger than Biden, fresher and newer than Biden.
Notice how she conveniently leaves out Bernie Sanders.
And you know who y'all picked to be the president and the nominee? Joe Biden.
No, we did not. We did not pick Joe Biden. So again, how do these people get away with this? How do like if you have a functioning brain, how do you watch this crap and take it seriously? How do you they did not have a fair primary in 2020, and they definitely didn't have a fair primary in 2024. Regardless of what you think about the seriousness of Marianne Williams, or RFK Jr. even, they made sure there was no primary. So this whole thing is completely their fault. But let's keep listening to Joy for a minute here.
Beat all the young people. So yes, we have a gerontocracy problem on the Democratic side. Way too many of these oldie goldies that don't seem to want to sit down and retire. But when given the choice between the young and fresh and Joe Biden, y'all picked Joe Biden. That was what you picked. So he's in there because Democrats actually picked him in the first place. So just keep that in mind, that you've been given options in the past, and this is what you picked. And nobody stepped up to choose to run against him in the primary. So,
okay, that is not what we picked. That is not what voters picked. I showed this this graphic last time, but let me see if I can find it again, because I can't. I got some good ones in here. Sanders fundraising. Well, here's a good one. I'll just put up for you real quick from my archive. Here's MSNBC comparing Bernie Sanders' win in Nevada to a Nazi invasion. Most of these headlines I have to pull up from a screenshot because I can't get past their paywall. But there's one about party damage, like the Democratic Party willing to risk damage to get rid of Bernie Sanders. Anyway, the hidden. All right, well, you get the idea. Joy Reid is completely off her rocker when she says that we chose Joe Biden as our nominee. The Democrats did not choose Joe Biden as the nominee. He was foisted on us by Barack Obama and the donors.
Again, Democrats went out and voted and picked. If you try to undo that choice, like 57 million some odd Democrats voted in these primaries, so what are you going to do? You're going to just tell them, F off, we're going to pick somebody different that's not him? or Kamala Harris, who was on that ticket too, on those ballots.
See, the thing I love the most about this is they did all this. They subverted their own primaries, and now they're stuck with a geriatric, clearly demented nominee. Anything they do is going to cause problems. If they subvert Kamala, they're going to piss off all the, black women or women of color that support Kamala for identity purposes, which is largely their base. Most smart women know better. They're not behind Kamala Harris. She's a friggin' puppet. She's terrible in California. She put tons of people in jail unfairly. She's protected the church rapists, Catholic church rapists. She's terrible. And she's just a vapid person when you listen to her talk, So they're stuck now. And I love it. I love listening to people like Joy here make excuses for it.
That's not democracy. This choice has been made. And so again, unless he decides to walk away, this is your choice. It's like when.
So what she's describing here too is the democracy they're trying to save, right? Like, remember, we pick the guy, we pick the candidates, and you get to choose, and that's democracy. And Trump winning would put that at risk, that version of democracy. That's their argument, really.
You go to a wedding, you got chicken or fish. You can eat chicken or fish or just be hungry. Or like when I was growing up, in my house, it's what mom made for dinner or go to bed. There's your choices. You don't always get choices in your love. You get what mom made for dinner or take your ass to bed. And in this case, it's either what mom made for dinner or Hitler. I'm voting for whoever ain't Hitler, and it ain't him. And I'm going.
Okay, so I came across this clip this week that I got to show you of Hitler. People forget that Trump was on TV for years and years. Like he was never accused. Listen, the Central Park 5 thing is probably the most racist, literally like racist thing I could find Trump doing. But I want you to watch this clip from him being on the Wendy Williams show, like way back in the day. This is the Hitler that they're speaking of.
Mr. Trump,
How are you?
I work really long hours, and my boyfriend is starting to think that I may be cheating on him.
Whoa.
How
Are
do-
you? Are you cheating?
I am not, Donald. How do I assure him that when I'm at work, I'm actually doing work and not someone else?
Now, Donald, I'm going to let you answer first. And your wife is a businesswoman, so I'm sure she works
Listen to what Hitler has to say to this woman of color.
late sometimes as well.
But I think if he has that in the back of his mind, I mean, do you love him that much?
Absolutely.
Can you live without him?
No, I cannot.
Because,
live
if
without
he
him.
has that now in the back of his mind,
gonna
that
only
could
get-
be trouble.
It's only going to
For
get
the
worse.
future, I'm saying.
How long
Okay.
have you been with him?
12 years.
And how old are you?
32.
And why boyfriend? He's not.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another show.
Oh, well, here's what I would suggest. You tell him that you're working late, and he better not, to prove his point, try to roll up at the job and do something embarrassing like where is she, or cruise the parking lot.
Okay.
If he can't take your word for it, then you know what? After 12 years, maybe this is not the guy for you. And if we have to have another show on why it is you want to get married and he hasn't married you, then maybe they need to break up.
And you know what? I'm looking at you. You will have no trouble getting guys.
Okay.
Hitler!
Okay.
That's Hitler. That's the Hitler they're trying to protect you from. It's just ridiculous, and I'm not arguing that Trump hasn't said or done racist things. I'm sure he has, but this is who they want you to vote for to protect you from Hitler. I dug up this article. This is from 2019, back when you were still allowed to criticize Joe Biden and actually point to things from his past. And this is from the Jacksonville Free Press. So this is from Mississippi Press, but it says Joe Biden and the Dixiecrats who helped his career. And the date on this, it's very small at the bottom, but it's May 1st of 2019, just to give you an idea of how old this article is. But I didn't clip the whole thing but I'll give you the context. So let's just read this first paragraph here. This is the guy, remember, this is the guy you need to vote for to protect you from Hitler. Longtime cotton planter James O. Eastland puffed on a bulging cigar in the U.S. Senate dining hall in Washington, D.C. during dinner one evening. or as the balding 73-year-old senator called it, supper. In a few short months, the powerful Mississippi Democrat would retire, closing the book on a political career that he began and grew by using overtly racist appeals and outspoken opposition to civil rights. On that evening in 1978, though the powerful Dixiecrat would once again offer counsel to one of his favorite young mentees, soon after 35-year-old Delaware freshman Senator Joseph Biden joined him. Eastland sensed something was amiss. "Son, what's the matter?" Eastland asked a visibly dejected Biden. Biden, a member of the prestigious Senate Judiciary Committee that Eastland chaired, explained that he faced tough re-election odds in November and feared he might lose his seat. What old Jim Eastland can do for you in Delaware, offered Eastland, whose history of explicit white supremacist rhetoric included warnings years earlier that integration would lead to mongrelization, a lowering of education standards. "Well, some places you can help, Mr. Chairman, and some places you'd hurt," Biden replied, knowing Eastland's endorsement would, if anything, cost him votes in the more liberal Northeast. "Well, I'll come to Delaware and campaign for you again. Whichever will help you the most." The man known back home as Big Jim replied knowingly, I promise. He called me son." So the article here goes on to have Biden talking about how, he can work with these people in the climate of Washington. You might not agree with them, but he can still work with them type thing. But it's pretty clear that, this whole, if you look at Biden's history of voting, even he opposed busing, he supported the Iraq War. He's a lot more in this camp than they want to give him credit for. And so to watch someone like Joy Reid babble about how she's voting to prevent Hitler from getting into office, it's just absolutely disgustingly disingenuous and fake. And she knows it too. She's smarter than that. She's not that dumb. So moving on though, I had a bit queued up for last week that I skipped, and I skipped it because I kind of just ran out of time. So I'm going to do that next, but just to tie up all this press stuff in a nice little bow here, I would like to show you this video of Max and Aaron kind of just giving their take on the press response to the Biden debate and everything.
Was like someone who we needed to invoke the 25th Amendment for, who's a danger, who's...
So, like I said, this is them claiming, basically proving that Biden is everything that the press claims that Trump was.
Constantly now blaming the media for everything. If you look at Biden, like his team now, like all of a sudden they've become like grassroots. Like we're the candidate. I'm the candidate of the grassroots. It's the party donors, the party elite who's trying to oust me. And it's very similar to Trump. I mean, Trump also, went against the Republican establishment, claimed he.
And that makes you wonder if, post debate, because there are a lot of these stories came out that the donors want Biden out. And I think maybe they think that if they frame it like that, people will go, oh, well, if the donors don't like him, maybe he's not so bad. I mean, I don't think it's the truth by any stretch, but let's keep watching.
Went against the Republican establishment, claimed he was the base. Also went against the media, obviously blamed them for everything. And now Biden's doing the same thing. And but unlike Trump, when I think the whole 25th Amendment thing was manufactured, in the case of Biden, it's legit to, I think, talk about that. We're talking about the oldest president ever and someone who's clearly not with it. And he's in charge of the nuclear code. So 25th Amendment is totally fair to raise, I think.
From the first second that Trump declared, the press was at his throat, and they developed the Russiagate narrative immediately. Joe Biden would not be president without the press protecting him. And if you actually were in Washington and talked to members of the Beltway press corps, a lot of them had actually convinced themselves that Biden was compos mentis, and that he was actually all there, all the way up to the debate. And those who raised the issue of Biden's dementia were mauled by their peers. Just look at little milquetoast Ezra Klein, who declared that Biden was a liability in the New York Times. He was completely destroyed by members of the Beltway press corps. It's hilarious. And then as the debate started to take place, the few kind of liberal influencer Beltway wise guy accounts that I follow, they all started tweeting, Ezra Klein was right. I guess we owe an apology to Ezra Klein. It's like, don't you see what we were all seeing? This is the press. They refuse to see what we're seeing. They all take orders from the top, and then they actually internalize those orders into their own beliefs and distill them to whatever few members of the American public actually still believe them. When Biden is out there yelling at people, calling them dog-faced pony soldiers, challenging a old farmer in Iowa to a push-up contest and an IQ test because he asks about Hunter Biden's crooked deals. This is in 2019. I mean, it was all obvious. So
yeah. Yeah. So again, people who watch indie media have known that Biden is senile since 2020. In the last stream I did, I showed a graphic I made, a Photoshop of the cover of Weekend at Bernie's where they're holding him up, So we've all known this.
The press.
Well, and they also promoted two major scams that were designed to help Biden win. The Hunter Biden laptop thing being a Russian op. That was a complete scam. Actually, that was done at the behest of the Biden campaign. Antony Blinken called up Michael Morell, former top CIA official, and asked him to basically call the Hunter Biden laptop story a Russian operation. And that's exactly what Morell and 50 other former intelligence officers did. And the whole media totally bought into it.
Yep.
Everybody repeated, even though it was an obvious scam at the time. Of course, we called that out. Then there was the Russian.
So again, just to go back real quick to my slide here, this is what you're dealing with. These are the people you're dealing with. This woman's tweet, she's basically telling you, I'll vote for Biden no matter what. It doesn't matter. And that's the press. That's the actual press right now.
Story, which Biden used to attack Trump with, which was another scam. This idea that Russia was paying the Taliban and its fighters to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan. Another complete scam. Biden used that in his debate. Well after the fact, U.S. intelligence admitted there's no evidence for it. It was another scam. And then, of course, the media totally went along with it.
I totally forgot about the Russian bounties thing. Do you remember that? Putin's doing Russian. It's so obvious looking back how all the Russia propaganda during Trump was designed to, grease the American mind for a war with through Ukraine.
So much mania around that story in the summer of 2020. It was on MSNBC every single day. Even when top Pentagon officials were saying, actually, there's actually no evidence for this. Still, they ignored that. And that was done not only to, promote tensions with Russia, which of course is a dominant trend, but also to help Biden.
Yeah, the Aspen Institute hosted simulations of the release of stories about Hunter Biden's laptop, and several influential journalists were brought in to basically help lead their colleagues in the narrative that was going to be put forward to paint the laptop as Russian disinformation.
So there was an organized effort by the security state. And as we just talked about right here, these neocons, the former Bush administration officials all rallied behind Joe Biden. That's wild. And looking back here, these guys are going through this litany of fake stories that they used to prop this guy up. And then they had to put him on stage in front of the country the other night. And they're in shambles, as Nick Cruz would say.
One of them was Noah Shachtman, who's repeatedly attacked the gray zone through his role as editor-in-chief of the Neocon Daily Beast. So the
Neocon Daily Beast.
Basically, we see the real role of the press here. And so now we have to ask ourselves, why are they playing this role in trying to oust Biden? What was the agenda going into that debate when Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, two Democratic or anti-Trump loyalists, were assigned to ask the questions and the way they went about asking the questions? I mean, what really happened behind the scenes?
This is interesting. I just want to take a sidebar here because I have this clip. But the way that debate ended was so telling. And I want to, here it is. Where's that clip? Alex Jones. I know it's on here. Oh, man. I got to find it. So there was a clip. I'll have to put it in post. But there was a clip that Alex Jones had. God damn it. I'm going to find it. Of them leaving the stage. And at the end of the debate, they go into the Biden and his wife walk up to basically walk up to, oh, here it is. Okay. Let me show this to you. Because the way that the debate ends, Trump kind of just walks off stage, but Biden gets led to the to the debate stage and, you know, like high fives the moderators. Watch this. So you see Trump just kind of trots off stage. And I muted the music in this because they had copyrighted music in it. But just watch what Biden does to Max and Aaron's point here. She kind of walks him down. And they go over and, oh, thank you guys. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Anyway. It was telling because there was the point when, I don't know if you probably saw this if you watched the debate, but the point when Biden goes, we finally beat Medicare, and was like off on this rant, Jake Tapper cuts him off and goes, thank you, Mr. President. Like immediately tries to like cut him off to save him. So it was pretty obvious that they did their best to cover for him in that, but they failed miserably.
The most interesting conspiracy theory I've seen, maybe the most outlandish, is that Biden was given a placebo going into the debate. In other words, he's normally given a cocktail of Adderall, Vyvanse, trucker speed, and some things that might not be available to the general public. But this time they gave him a placebo, and we saw the real Biden. I don't think that's true because we always see the real Biden. But what we're witnessing now, it feels like a kind of soft-core political assassination being waged by the same press that foisted Biden onto the public and also has protected him from real accountability for this genocide in Gaza, as well as the Ukraine proxy war, which is a completely lost war.
So we're going to talk about what's going on in Gaza next. This is a segment I meant to do last week that I just inadvertently skipped over. But it's really about the news and how they cover things versus the indie press. So there was a protest in LA recently. And if you watch the news, they kind of glossed over, for the most part, the biggest part of it. So I want to start by showing you how the news covered this. But basically what happened is it was a Code Pink protest, and they were auctioning off land in Gaza at this synagogue in LA. And so a protest showed up. But watch how the actual, mainstream, this is Fox News actually, just to show you, MSNBC, CNN, they're bad. Fox is just as bad. The idea that any of these corporate news outlets are any better than the other, they're all terrible. But watch, this is Fox News's coverage of this protest, just to show you how terrible they were anyway on this. So this is an area I know really well. This is the Robertson district of Beverly Hills in West LA. A lot of Hasidic Jews in this area. Very, very Jewish area, by the way.
Violence breaking out over the weekend in Los Angeles after a group of anti-Israel agitators blocked the entrance to a synagogue.
So right there, this is how they frame it. A group of anti-Israel agitators blocked the entrance to a synagogue,
Sending fists flying in the riot police response. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt is live in Los Angeles with the latest. Hello, Jonathan.
Good morning, Mike. They were extraordinary scenes, pitched battles being fought between pro-Palestinian protesters.
I love how they get these British guys that sound all official. Good evening, sir. Sporty Dick and tea and protests.
Who targeted a synagogue and members of that synagogue and of the Jewish community that surrounds it. This all taking place in the heart of Los Angeles, in the middle of one of the city's largest Jewish communities. About 100 pro-Palestinian.
Now, that is true. That is a very Jewish part of Los Angeles, but Los Angeles in general is a very Jewish city. I mean, there's a Jewish population, very large Jewish population where I live. There's very large Jewish population all over the city. So, I mean, it's much like New York, I would say, in that respect.
Protesters descended on the area Sunday morning, and almost immediately violence broke out as those protesters tried to block the entrance to the Adass Torah synagogue. Jewish counter-protesters tried to push
They tried to block the entrance. That's all he's telling you.
them back, and for some time, violent fights broke out between the two sides.
When they're screaming globalize the Intifada, they're screaming kill Jews for being Jews. And, no, not going to let that happen.
Riot police intervened to try to keep the two groups apart and clear the pro-Palestinian protesters from the Jewish neighborhood. But tensions remained high for several hours. And at one point, at least 8 officers with weapons drawn ordered 2 pro-Palestinian protesters from their car, clearly concerned the vehicle itself could be used as a weapon. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass condemned the protest.
Ban vehicles. That's an inside joke.
Protesters saying, quote, today's violence in the Pico Robertson neighborhood was abhorrent and blocking access to a place.
Abhorrent? See, these British guys aren't so classy. Are they abhorrent? He's slightly dyslexic.
Place of worship is unacceptable. I want to be clear that Los Angeles will not be a harbor for anti-Semitism and violence. Those responsible for either will be found and held accountable. Now, Mike, I spoke to Rabbi Chaim Mentz of the nearby Chabad of Bel Air as the violence was playing out yesterday. He told me he found it reminiscent of the Nazi youth on the streets of Germany in the 1930s. And he said, who would ever have thought we would see this on the streets of American cities? Mike?
Deeply disturbing visuals. Jonathan Hunt, thanks very much.
Sure.
So that's Fox News's coverage of the LA protest, which is close to me. I was not there, but I know the area. Now here is Max and Aaron's take on the protest, and let's see how their viewpoints differ from Fox News here.
On 2 of those themes you just brought up. In Los Angeles, in West LA, at a synagogue hosted another auction for stolen land in the illegally occupied Palestinian West Bank for settlement units, illegal settlement units, which is a violation of international law and a war crime. And so basically a war crime is being sponsored inside a synagogue. If there was like fundraising for ISIS inside a mosque in the US, I don't think people would respond very positively in the community, and they're doing it openly. But what happened here is the synagogue, which is encouraging anti-Semitism by carrying out these heinous acts inside its walls, by uniting the Jewish faith with crimes against people who are occupied.
So you'll notice at no point in that Fox News breakdown did they mention the protest or the motives behind the protest. They just said anti-Israel protest agitators, actually is the word they used, blocked the door to a synagogue, basically.
They played the victim.
And honestly, they played the victim. I would not doubt if they set it up that way on purpose so that they could play that card, but let's keep going.
Of course. And pretended like they were being attacked simply because they're a synagogue and simply because they're Jewish. Of course. Of course they would do that. I mean, this is a scene from outside the synagogue, and you can see it's the Zionist hooligans who are attacking the anti-genocide protesters. They eventually just start beating him. They start beating him, and the cops, there's LAPD right there. Are you going to do something or what? He said. And they push him away and do nothing.
Now you see why the mainstream press calls Max and Aaron in the gray zone disinformation all the time and tries to associate them with Russia and enemies, like, you know, the declared enemies of the United States.
These are the same thugs that attacked students at UCLA for protesting genocide. And of course, it was framed as though it was some kind of pogrom by someone who used to be actually a black radical in the Bay Area, Van Jones.
This is really interesting. This shows you how far the quote unquote progressive left has fallen.
And this was the whole media take. Like, you can look at mainstream articles in Yahoo News or Bloomberg about this protest. They don't tell you what was happening inside the synagogue, that the synagogue was involved in international legal violations. This is Van Jones.
At the same time, I think it's a little bit naive for some people to think that if Israel would just suddenly just stop doing what it's doing, that rainbows and bunnies and sunshine would break out over the Middle East and it would all be fine. The hostages have to be returned. You can call for a ceasefire on both sides. Hamas is still firing its rockets. They still have hostages kidnapped. So this is a complex issue, but here's what's not complicated.
That's what a ceasefire is, dummy.
It's going to be complicated. Geopolitics can be really complicated. How you treat your neighbors, how you treat people in your community is not complicated.
That's beautiful, man.
Don't run up. I haven't seen any Jewish people running up on mosques with Israeli flags. If they did that, I'd be denouncing that too. There's certain.
Well, they have. They also brutally assaulted students at UCLA right down the street. They were assaulting people at that event.
Things you don't do. It is a red line. If you want to be a part of a protest and they say, we're going to go to a Jewish community center, we're going to go to a mosque, we're going to go to a Jewish restaurant. That's not a protest. That's a pogrom. That's an anti-Jewish bigoted act. If you want to be a part of a protest, let's go to a mosque. Let's go and harass the Muslims. That's not a protest. So we've got to get clear in our country what is a fair protest about policy, you can agree or disagree, and what's going after people, human beings, terrifying moms, grandmas, children who are trying to be a part of a neighborhood.
Why don't you go back to your home on Whore Island?
The Jewish neighborhoods in LA are well known. Nobody is confused where they are. So if you show up there wearing keffiyeh, you show up there with your face covered, you show up there chanting river to the sea, that would be just like a white person running up with a Confederate flag in Harlem. You're not trying to start a conversation. You're trying to start a fight. Stop doing that. Don't do that. We don't want more violence. We don't want more fear. We don't want more terrified people. We've got to be able to come together as a country. If either side had an easy answer, it'd have been solved. I'm less concerned about the politicians now. I'm concerned about the people in my community in Los Angeles moving in a direction that is more and more dangerous, more and more scary, more and more destructive. The Jewish community does not need to have people doing those types of things. It's not helping anybody in Palestine, but it's making America a much less safe place for everybody.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
Maoist leader Van Jones.
So many just falsehoods in there. And just the premise of his point, like if there was a mosque complicit in mass murder and land theft, of course it'd be fair game to protest them.
Yeah.
places of worship are not exempt from protests, if they're supporting war crimes.
No one in high school knew what the word anti-Semitic was until Ye made it popular.
So I want to play you. This actually surprised me because Max and Aaron have a clearly different take on this protest than Fox News does. But this was CNN, or not CNN. Well, CNN had Van Jones. This is actually NBC's take on the protest, which is surprisingly
Scene in West Los Angeles over the weekend. Violence broke out between a group of pro-Palestinian protesters and supporters of Israel outside a synagogue. Video from the scene Sunday appears to show people yelling at each other. And
so it's a little more balanced, as you can see. It's not like anti-Israel agitators block a synagogue. It's like, hey, pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel protesters clash. So a little bit, I'll give NBC credit here. A little bit more fair coverage than we've seen anywhere else so far.
there are reports of people throwing punches and using protest signs as weapons. Police in riot gear were called in to break up the tense situation. NBC News correspondent David Noriega has been following this story for us from Los Angeles. So, David, we've seen a lot of protests over the last few months, but how serious did this end up being, and have any arrests been made?
Yeah, Zinkley, I mean, this was serious, if only because of the amount of attention that it's getting, including from elected officials at local, state, and national levels. Even the president posted a tweet about it, mostly because this protest and the altercations happened outside of a synagogue in a very heavily Jewish part of West LA. Now, the reason that there was a protest at that synagogue in the first place is because there was an event being held in the synagogue promoting real estate in Israel, including with participation from a company that has in the past promoted property listings in Israeli settlements in the West Bank. That is why.
There you go. He actually said it. Props to NBC for being fair in their coverage here. I was very surprised when I saw this. He actually said they were protesting because they were selling real estate in the West Bank.
Protesters targeted this particular event. Now, it did devolve into violence. The LAPD says that there were several physical altercations between protesters and counter-protesters, and there was one arrest of a person at the protest who was carrying what the police described as a spiked pole, presumably some kind of sign or flagpole. The LAPD also says that it's investigating 2 official reports of battery. Now, in terms of violence, this is certainly less than what we saw during the encampment on the UCLA campus here in LA a couple of months ago. But again, in terms of the amount of attention that it's getting, and any kind of violence around this particular issue is going to be significant and something that's going to get a lot of attention. Sinclair?
Always important reporting. David Noriega, thank you so much.
So props to David Noriega and NBC for having a fair and balanced take. Remember when that was Fox News's slogan, fair and balanced, back in the early days of their right-wing agenda? They're totally neocons. Let's not get it twisted. And so is MSNBC. So I was very surprised to see that balance of coverage on. That's not MSNBC. That's just NBC. So maybe there's a difference. I don't know. Whatever the case, that's a protest that was close to me. And I remember seeing the coverage and going, wait a minute, they're leaving some stuff out. So as you can see from CNN and Fox's coverage, very, very slanted in a certain direction. And it's always good to have Max and Aaron's perspective. But also for me personally, I criticize the media a lot, and I definitely need to pay closer attention to what the corporate media is saying, because I talk a lot of shit, and every once in a while they'll surprise me by doing something right, like NBC just did there. So I got one more segment for y'all, and this one it was an eye-opener for me because, okay, it's about Kevin Spacey, and I haven't really followed the whole scandal with him. You know, I know he got Me Too'd kind of, just like a lot of people did. But I have to admit, I've been a fan of Kevin Spacey for a long time, as any person who's into movies, I'm sure is. He's been in some fantastic movies. Have you seen The Life of David Gale? Holy crap. That is one of the best movies about capital punishment probably ever made. He was in Usual Suspects, 7. I mean, House of Cards, I didn't really get that into. I tried to, but I couldn't get that into it. But the guy's just been in, I'm leaving stuff out, American Beauty. Like, he's been in a phenomenal actor in a ton of phenomenal movies for a long time. But the guy has a history of abuse. And I mean, I didn't know about all this, but I guess his dad was like some kind of a Nazi cosplay guy who was very sexually abusive to his children. And Spacey's brother is a Rod Stewart impersonator. But I took these clips. If you're a fan, I don't know if you're a fan of Shane Gillis and Philly Girl. If I saw you in the chat, you might be a fan of Shane Gillis. He's a Pennsylvania guy. Big fan of Shane Gillis. He's like a guy's comedian type thing, and he's just a funny dude. His Trump impression's great. But I happened to catch this clip of them talking about Kevin Spacey, and they called his thing a honkumentary because apparently he's a big on grabbing dicks. And it just got me thinking, with all the Me Too stuff, I mean, this is an example of a guy totally using his position to, abuse people in a very obvious way that, I kind of overlooked, I think a little bit because it's gay. It's not heterosexual kind of power abuse. But anyway, this is both funny and informative. So I thought I would close out with some of these clips and we can talk about them a little bit. Here's the first one.
Spacey unmasked last night.
How was that?
Fine, other than the worst thing he did was he jacked off during Saving Private Ryan. So it's the same thing over and over again. It's the same story. He goes, he meets a dude, and he's clearly just trying to fuck these guys.
Yeah. Sure.
And every dude is like a Hollywood guy, like a desperate Hollywood actor that's like, this is my big chance. He wants to be my friend.
I've just got a new best friend.
He chose me to be friends with for no reason.
Yeah. Well,
dude,
there's
they're
a reason.
Yeah, I know, but that's their mind. They're like,
So I like this edit too because they clip in little pieces from the documentary. But the point he's making is it's exactly what happens in the heterosexual world. It's the same exact dynamic. These producers, these Hollywood people, these famous fools, they're like, they meet like a groupie type or someone who's an up and aspiring actress, and they're like, hey, I'm so and so from this. Why don't you come to my place for a party? But
just could see it in me.
Yeah.
So he's never seen you act. You're at a bar.
Right.
I had come to terms with, okay, I'm willing to do something uncomfortable to get something out of it.
He's wearing leather pants.
And these guys are so naive. What's funny too is these guys are like swearing up and down that they're not actually gay, but when you watch them talk, you're kind of like, I don't know, man. I think he might be repressing something.
The guy was like, he saw me at the Golden Globes. I was just standing there, and Kevin Spacey walked up and was like, "Who are you?"
First thing he says to me is, "Who are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm Travis Wade."
Listen, I've been hit on by gay men on several occasions. I'm a pretty good looking dude, not to brag, but I would not go to someone's house with them if they invite, like, hey, you want to come to my house? No, that's I'm good. You're a nice guy and everything, but I got shit to do.
He looks at me, he's like, there's a party tonight, and I would love to come as my guest. Are you sure people are coming? He goes, yeah, people come in, they come out, I'll let them in, and the party gets...
Oh, people are coming, all right.
It's going as the night goes on, and sit.
It's like, obviously he's trying to fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
What do you think that is? Oh, he's like, there's a party at my house. So they go back to his house. He like makes out with them. There's no one else there. Yeah. And then,
he was like, people just come and go. It's that kind of party.
Yeah, that one. I think that actually might have been a different guy than the Saving Private Ryan guy.
That's
he got him in the home theater. He got the Saving Private Ryan guy. They were at a house party, and he was like, we should go check out this home theater. Yeah. And I was like, okay. It's like, bro, you know what that is.
He's watching movies. They're both cinephiles.
Exactly. You know what that is. Oh, let's you and me go check out this theater together.
They are cinephiles.
So I think the point of me kind of showing this a little bit is I think I'm a little less sympathetic to these men because A, they're men, and B, they're clearly being naive. But you'll see as this progresses how bad it is, because I see the same dynamic with a lot of the Me Too cases, and that's not to say that all of them are ginned up and fake, because a lot of them are legit, and these are legit. I mean, these are legit on some level. You'll see why as we get toward the end. It's a little bit dicey, but it's still fun.
All of a sudden, there's some activity happening next to me, and kind of glance over, and Kevin's just pleasuring himself.
Just based on the tightness of that guy's shirt alone, I'm questioning, which way he swings. So no offense to my gay friends, but like, I don't know many straight guys that would wear a shirt that tight.
He grabbed one guy's dick on the set of fucking House of Cards.
Just honked him between shots.
We do this little U-turn, and then we're on the other side of the set, and
watch this.
it's just me and him.
So this guy apparently worked with Spacey on the House of Cards show, and this is crazy.
I leaned in because he was saying something to me, and then I felt something tickle me just right below my zipper, and I was like, what? I look down, and I see it's his finger. Yeah, no, his hand touched my penis.
We had a lot of fun together. When he left the show, we were emailing to each other. In fact, in one of our flirty emails, which we had, I asked him to send me, he was talking about working out, he was getting buff, and I said, oh, send me a picture. And he sent me a couple pictures that were naked and provocative.
We've got them.
Huh.
We were watching it last night. I was like, dude.
So that guy that's accusing him of, unwanted advances or whatever, sent him nudes recently. So that's weird on its own. It's like, wait a minute. Do these guys get paid to do these? It's like the Michael Jackson thing, right? Like the two guys that did the Michael Jackson documentary on HBO recently testified in court when they were kids that he never touched them. And now suddenly they're doing this documentary about how Michael Jackson did all this shady stuff because they got money for the documentary. So it makes me wonder if it's a similar dynamic here. And I'm not condoning what Spacey did or anything. It does seem pretty creepy, but it's common in Hollywood. Anyway, keep watching.
Dude, I'm ruined. I've honked everyone.
Shane's like, I've grabbed a lot of dicks. So they go to a sidebar that I kind of cut out, but you should go watch the whole thing. It's a podcast they did with Sam Talent.
Jay Gill is
Yeah, but
unmasked.
there's
Where
intent.
like,
There's
Gervin's
intent.
crying. Like, well, then he grabbed my penis. He told me it's what guys do for fun.
There's intent, though.
True.
It's intent. It's intent. All right, so here's the second part of this.
One guy he goes out with, he's like, let's go hang out. So they're walking around, they go to a movie theater. The guy had just worked on Saving Private Ryan. And he was like, oh, this is your movie, let's go watch it. So they're sitting in the theater, and it's the opening scene, it's D-Day. And the guy said he looked over and Kevin Spacey was jacking off.
To D-Day.
To D-Day.
Yeah.
To Saving Private Ryan's D-Day.
Right. Just headshot, explosion.
Like, there's no way that this is happening, that this guy is rubbing one out during the invasion of Normandy.
Just trying to see if he was trying to take his temperature.
D-Day.
D afternoon.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Take
you can
his
trick
time.
guys that easily, it just goes to show that the women never stood a chance.
To be fair to Spacey, the possibility of getting head during that D-Day scene is immense. Dude.
Iconic.
It'd be crazy.
It would outweigh all of his Oscars. It would be the biggest
I love these guys.
accomplishment. I made a straight guy suck my dick during D-Day.
He says that at his Hollywood Walk of Fame speech. Of all my accolades.
He should have put his cock.
By the way, fun fact, Kevin Spacey's star on the Walk of Fame is right next to Donald Trump's in front of the Grauman Chinese Theater. I know that being a Hollywood local or a LA local, so stupid but fun fact.
In the hand star.
Yeah, true.
Fell forward and put his dick in.
Or it's just 9 fingers and then one dick imprint. Guess which one is
Is
fan.
Kevin Spacey, he's back. He's just like back doing his thing now. What do they do the behind the actor studio now?
I don't think they. No. That wasn't.
That was
behind the
stock
actor.
footage. He
Yeah.
just did an interview now, didn't he?
He came out after 3 years of silence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the interview was. I think for some reason I heard behind.
No,
the
this was interviewing the victims. Just dudes who got honked over the last 25 years.
What?
Honked. A lot of dudes got
It was a
honked.
honkumentary?
It was an absolute honkumentary.
He likes flipping servicemen. That's his ultimate fetish because his dad was a Nazi and like diddle him like while dressed in SS gear.
What?
So
his
now
dad was a big time Nazi.
Yeah. And his like brother
His
now
brother turned into
dresses
Rod
like
Stewart.
Yeah, exactly.
He had a Nazi dad. He
Jerking
turned-
off the D-Day makes a little
Yeah.
more sense now.
So that is a sidebar there. Now you understand why he's so messed up, because that's always the case with these abusive people. It's always a cycle, right? Like they were always abused by someone else when they were young, and then they have to act it out in their own life. And, I feel bad for Spacey for that. He probably doesn't even know why he does the things he does in some respects, because he's maybe psychologically blocked it all out, but that's crazy. I mean, imagine having to grow up in an environment like that. It would totally mess you up, And again, I'm not condoning what he did. It seems like he definitely did some messed up stuff, but also the guy that, is claiming he was diddling him and then was sending him nudes. That's weird. That makes his accusation seem a little less serious at the very least.
True.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
He was like, "These defeat these motherfuckers."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He just did an interview himself, though. I'm pretty sure.
I think he did. No, he did one with Tucker Carlson. That was nuts, dude.
Recently?
Yeah.
And Merry Christmas to you too.
He did a Tucker one where he broke the fourth wall again and did that House of Cards thing.
No, he did it again?
Yeah, he did it during the interview with Tucker.
So does that mean this is like an episode, or is it real? Well, it's probably a little of both. I mean, Tucker, what's true, what's false? What's life, what's art? What's real, what's performance? I love it when these things intersect, because then it gets interesting.
And our subject has been about the media this whole time, and that's profoundly accurate when you talk about them propping up Joe Biden and pretending that the left is not a neocon faction now out in the post-Obama era.
It was very weird.
What Tucker says?
Tucker's like,
oh, all right.
Have you ever had a Zins, Kevin Spacey?
Fair. So,
but
it is funny to get just by your own devices to rationalize being in Kevin Spacey's basement, being like, yeah, man, I'm a phenomenal. That one commercial he saw me in,
he never saw any of these guys in anything. And they were like, this could be my entire career. I have to do this. The one guy was like, I'm not gay. I sucked his dick for like 10 seconds. And then I was like, this is not me.
And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to try to give him head and see if that works. There was zero attraction or interest in me being sexual. I mean, it felt like I was something that I had to do.
Now you have to ask yourself a question. If you're a straight man, would you give Kevin Spacey head in a private room if you were not gay? I don't know. Maybe you think this is your career, the beginning of your career. I don't know if I'd want to start my career like that. Anyway.
To get to where I wanted to go. I think that lasted about 5 to 10 seconds. I kind of just gagged. And that's when it really hit me, like, there was no quid pro quo. He was never offering me anything. It was almost like I got to be in the graces of his company. And that's your gift for letting me come all over myself next to you.
And he barfed.
He barfed 10 seconds, dude. Yeah. That's kind of fucked up. He sucked him for 10 seconds. If I was on the jury, I'd be
Spaceman finished it off, don't worry. The Spaceman jacked off and then drove around with him for like 3 more hours.
3 hours, just covering himself.
He wanted to keep driving around and like.
It's not funny, but it is funny.
Like, talk to me for 3 hours with like cum-stained pants.
What a high crime. I would have stood up in the jury and be like, you sucked him for 10 seconds and stop? Be like, guys, I would give an impassioned speech. I would give an impassioned speech like, what's really wrong? What's the greatest wrong here?
Yeah.
True. You should be on trial.
10-second suck will give a man a heart attack.
Yeah, you're guilty of blue ballery. Dude, he like ran this like very famous theater in London.
This part is pretty messed up.
And he would have these like intensives where he would just round up like 60 of the most like supple dudes and be like, I'm your teacher. Come.
It's really great because we're front row right now and we can touch him if we wanted to. Anybody, don't be shy.
And he would just like sit next to him and like rub their backs and be like, you need to tap into something deeper. And then invariably, most of them.
You tap in.
Yeah. But every one of them was like, I've been training my whole life for this moment to be near Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
And then he's like, meet me upstairs. And he's just got his fucking throbbing cock in his hand. Yeah.
See, that's
apparently you've never seen Saving Private Ryan.
No, I haven't.
So why is he saying this?
I mean, my last question, did he get paid for telling this story? I don't know. What I do know is that he claimed that this incident at the movies happened in 1998. I have an email from him in 2011. I have an email from him in 2013.
So interesting stuff. I didn't know about Kevin Spacey. I still think he's a great actor, but that's kind of messed up. I mean, also seems like the movie thing might have been a little coordinated, especially when they show you the news that one guy sent him after the fact. I mean, that's a little dicey, but you know, at the same time, it's like when you dabble in that world, you kind of get what you deserve, I guess, you know? It's like Bill Clinton or any of those guys. I'm sure Bill Clinton has a lot more in his closet that we don't know about, you know? And so it's like the stuff that does come out when it's that, I guess, damning, you're kind of like, oh, wow. Like, who knows what else is under the rug that it didn't come out, you know? Anyway, interesting stuff. And I'm going to close it out with that. Thank you for tuning in today. If you did, like and subscribe, all that shit. YouTube seems to be, like I said earlier, a little bit less censorious these days. It seems like they're giving my videos a little bit more push, or a little bit more visibility anyway. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you. And I'm going to close out today with this video I made during the Russiagate era. And it's Matt Taibbi, and it's the Trump colluded with Russia remix based on David Korn. So if you know who David Korn is, he is a writer for the Mother Jones press outlet, who even wrote a book about Trump-Russia collusion that was later completely unraveled as a complete scam. The Clinton campaign paid a fine for the Steele dossier to the Federal Election Commission, you know, because they paid for that as opposition research through a law firm. So all that stuff has come out now, and this was just my little joke song about David Korn, painting him as a member of the band Korn. And I hope y'all enjoy it, and I'll see you out there online. Take good care of yourselves.
Colluded with Russia. I wrote a book about it. Trump colluded with Russia. I wrote a book about it. Matt Taibbi is a bad person. Trump colluded with Russia. Trump colluded with Russia. Matt Taibbi is a bad person. I wrote a book about it. Matt Taibbi is bad. Jeff Girth. Trump colluded with Russia. I wrote a book about it. Trump colluded with Russia. I wrote a book about it. Matt Taibbi is a bad person. Trump colluded with Russia. Trump colluded with Russia. Matt Taibbi is a bad person.
I'm a stud. I'm ballsy. I don't take no shit from anyone. I smoke my stogie anywhere I want. I don't have to find a hideout place like you.